And I think back to the way that we would spend hours teaching 7 variations of B skips, A skips, wall drills. Like I had 14 bounding progression. And why are we still doing the same active dynamic, walking knee hugs, mini band activation, foam rolling? Why is this still kind of the stepwise progression? Why aren't we reimagining what it could be and to actually move the needle on making a better athlete? What if your warm-up could not just keep players from getting hurt, but could actually make them better athletes? What if...
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 408 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. I'm your host, Anthony Renna. All right, this week we have on Rett Larson. He is in his 5th year as a strength coach for the German women's volleyball team. And before that, he was in China, first as a project manager for Exos China, working with several Chinese Olympic teams for their preparation of the 2012 London Games, and then later with the Chinese national women's volleyball team, which won both the 2015 World Cup and the 2016 Olympics in Rio. So following that gold medal victory, he worked for 2 years as a strength coach for the Netherlands women's volleyball team before leaving to join Team Germany, where he is right now. He's spent some time at Velocity Sports Performance for 10 years, as well as Exos. And then he created the No Zombies training philosophy, and that strives to make training more stimulating and beneficial for athletes. And most of you might know Rhett when he went viral for some of his warm-up videos, and he turned that into the No Zombies philosophy and the No Zombies membership website, actually. And so we're going to talk all about warm-ups today and how he's kind of developed a better warm-up. Basically, that's where he's looking at, and it's not just kind of going out there and dancing. So a lot of people think that, and it's not. He has a whole system on this. He has a whole template for these different blocks, and we're going to get all into it in this podcast. All right. Perform Better Summits, guys, next week, Chicago, June 12th to 14th. I'll be there. Remember, if you're going to be there, let me know, or make sure you come up and say hi. Long Beach, July 17th to the 19th. Providence, August 14th to the 16th. Similar to last year, opening day, Thursday, they're going to have 3 different business talks, and then Friday and Saturday, lectures and practicals with same thing as last year, too. The networking room. So you're going to be able to go each hour. You'll have 5 choices, two lectures, 2 practicals, or the networking room. And there'll be like 2 or 3 of the lecturers there, or you can go and hang out with them, ask them questions, just talk to them about whatever. So Chris got a lot of great feedback from that last year, so he brought it back. As always, social on Friday night with my man Kevin Hirschman playing guitar. Lots of new speakers, and no Sunday. So there's some special deals, so make sure you check it out. You can either bring your team. If you have a team, you got to talk to them about this, because you can bring your whole team for a really reduced rate, which is a great thing, because then you guys can split up and go to different ones and just kind of be able to talk about what you saw. So check all that out at performbetter.com. All right, today we finish up our series with Pete Holman and the glute slide. And Pete's been giving us some videos on training the hip, right? Using the glute slide. And today's going to talk about doing drop sets with the glute slide. Just a product that I personally love. I'm using for some of my hockey training. So I've had a lot of great success with that, kind of strengthening the hip in a different way. So here's Pete talking about drop sets.
One of the things I love about the glute slide is the patented push pin resistance adjustment mechanism. Now, each time you depress a pin, it picks up a cord. So if I push 1 pin down, it picks up 1 cord, 2 pins, 2 cords. So one of the things you can do on this is a drop set, like old school strip set, right? So you get into position, let's do a rear slide, and maybe you pick a rep range somewhere 4 to 6 reps. You go through your 4, 5, 6 reps, and then you pull a pin. Boom. I've reduced the resistance Keep going, right? We're building strength, endurance, and kind of training that anaerobic glycolytic system. This is great for hockey players, lacrosse players, soccer players, anybody that needs consistent energy over time. Sometimes you gotta overload that system and work on some endurance. And man, that gets you going metabolically. Woo! Get after it, everybody.
All right, guys, I'm here with Rett Larson. Rett, thanks for doing this, bud.
Hey, you know what, Anthony? Let's just cut the chit chat and get this over with. All right. I've always wanted to start a podcast as like a hostile witness.
Yeah. That might be a good, somebody listening out there might be a good angle for a podcast. I remember when I first started and I think we had like two people on kind of debating one time, and they were like, you got to do this more. You got to get like two people that don't agree. I'm like, I'm not that advanced. I'm not Maury. What was that old show?
Yeah, Maury Povich.
Yeah, Maury Povich or a couple of those guys. The other
Springer.
guy. Yeah, Jerry Springer. Yeah, no, that's not for me. Yeah, thanks for doing this, man. I love. It's funny because we were talking earlier, and you know, for years you've been doing these kind of really cool warm-ups, and you know, your dancing warm-up went viral, and I was so glad to see when you came up with, you know, the No Zombies idea, the membership site, and like, because I think a lot of people are like, yeah, Rhett, that's great, man, but I don't have time, or I don't have the room, or I don't have this, or I don't have these ideas, or I'm not creative. And like, it's like, well, here it is, people. So, I want to talk about, just start out with the warm up piece in terms of you had mentioned something to me, like warm ups haven't evolved since the active dynamic kind replaced just static stretching, and totally true. And you know, to be fair, you said that was fine. My standard athlete warm up kept everybody safe and ready to practice, but that bar is pretty low one to clear. So let's talk about this kind of evolution for you with the warm ups.
Well, so much has evolved. And when I think about the way that I'm training my athletes, even apart from warm up, I think of what my weight room looks like, where I am doing far more things at speed. I think that a lot of people with the influence of Tony Holler and some of the Franz Bosch things, we're seeing that, hey, if your weight room is just 100% slow, heavy stuff, you're missing a big part of what makes the best, most explosive athletes great, which is speed work and doing things as fast as possible. Well, that's where you see the curved treadmills and the people sprinting during weight training and just flat out running as hard as you can during your movement sessions, like spending less time. Oh my God, if I think back, you know, I worked in a sports performance training franchise for over a decade, and I think back to the way that we would spend hours teaching 7 variations of B skips, A skips, wall drills. Like I had 14 bounding progressions. And I am so glad that a competitor didn't open up across the street that simply had their kids sprinting all out 3 days a week and playing tag variations the other days a week. That if I'm nervous that I would have had this army of little kids that looked like, you know, budding track star robots. Yet I'm not sure we would have churned out better athletes than the kids across the street who are simply practicing at full throttle more often. And that is where I've been, you know, I think we've seen the evolution in sports performance training and maybe our weight rooms. And why are we still doing the same active dynamic, walking knee hugs, you know, mini band activation, foam rolling? Why is this still kind of the stepwise progression that at the time, absolutely groundbreaking and way better than taking 2 laps around a track and circling up and stretching, a huge step forward. But I think we've now gotten mired down into this because it is safe and it's effective because, you know, honestly, the bar for keeping athletes safe, if that's what you think warm up should only accomplish, is just getting their tissues warm. But why aren't we reimagining what it could be and to actually move the needle on making a better athlete? What if your warm up could not just keep players from getting hurt, but could actually make them better athletes? What if your track athlete, who is wonderful at running straight ahead, what if that was a time for them to explore other movements, to explore all the sports they never got to play? And I'm not asking for a wholesale change of the dynamic warm up to throw it away. I'm saying add 5 to 10% of something that is stimulating, that is pushing athletes to the outer edges of their athleticism, that is making them have to focus and concentrate because they've never had to solve this little movement puzzle before. And I think that this can be something that starts slowly, but if you're asking me what sports performance training looks like in 10 years, I'm hoping that a sports performance training facility or even a basketball team has a sack of Nerf footballs and frisbees and tennis balls and maybe some cheap pickleball paddles and a gymnastics mat and Nerf gun darts. I don't know what it is, frisbees, noodles that they have in the corner. That is the stuff that the athletes are using just during warm up, just for 10% of warm up, that has them excited and moving in new patterns and just expanding a movement library in the way that we hope multi-directional athletes will. Oh my God, I think I've just talked for like 8 minutes straight on
That's
this
going to do
rant,
it,
but
everybody.
you asked the right question. Yeah, let's just wrap it up right there.
So when was the aha moment for you? Were you sitting in your, in the old sports performance, when you were working for other companies, were you sitting there just saying, we got to come up with something better? Or did it over time, you're like, I'm losing these athletes? Where was it for you that started to say, I need to change something here?
Well, yeah, it was after probably the honeymoon phase of working there had started to fade, because like I said, the active dynamic warm-up at the time had hundreds of different exercises in it. There was jumping jack progressions, jump rope progressions, slide boards, medicine balls were involved sometimes. There were all these variations on a skip and scoop, knee hug, this, that, and it seemed amazing and expansive. But 8 years into it, 9 years into it, the athletes that had been there a long time, they knew the beats. They had done every single mini band walking variation that we were able to do. They were, they knew what came after each thing. And they could effectively sleepwalk through warm-ups. And just out of, I guess, coach boredom, which is a terrible reason to do this, we started saying that on Fridays, the athletes could play knockout basketball. They get in a line, and we have 2 balls, and the first person shoots a free throw. The person behind them is trying to get their ball in the free throw before the other person, which would knock them out. And we would just do that for 3 minutes or until there was a winner. And then we would go and just do our regular warm up. We would still be doing all of the walking quad stretches and things like that. But then we come back and play again. And it quickly was everyone's favorite day of the week. It was the day all the kids wanted to come in. And on all the other days of the week, you had to endure every athlete asking if we could play knockout today. And just have this aha moment where when I stopped working for franchises, when I said, why don't I make everyday knockout day? But can I make knockout? Can I substitute knockout for something that maybe is a little bit more specific to my sport? Maybe is something that a drill that I saw my head coach doing that is maybe super sport specific, but I'm going to put a S&C twist on it. I'm going to make everyone do it opposite handed or on one foot or with an eye closed or resisted by a bungee cord. Like, could it be something that I'm doing that I'm adding to my warm up that is delighting my athletes just because it's not the same stuff over and over again? And if I'm really killing it, is something that's delighting my head coach or my physical therapist. And I quickly realized it doesn't even have to just be a fun kids game to be successful in creating a more stimulating warm-up. It just has to be different. And that's where my world really opened up, because my athletes are happy to do microdose strength stuff instead of the regular jumps, crawls, series that they've been doing forever and ever. And now the world's my oyster. I can pepper in fun PE games with microdose strength, with the stuff that my physio wants us to do, the boring isometrics that I hate to do otherwise. If I've earned those by having the rest of warm up be fun, then like I'm in the sweet spot.
When you said your boredom is a bad reason, but when you're bored too, a lot of times it's an indication, probably there's a good chance they might be bored, right? Obviously, if you're doing this every day, okay, it's going to take them a little longer to be bored, but we don't want them sleepwalking through the warm-up, because I have seen that, like with bridges or planks, or, in the beginning, it's like, oh, we're going to do this stretch, and I want you to stop at the top and breathe. And they do it, and they'll stay there. Oh, I got a little more and whatever. And they'll spend some time on it. And then it turns into just chicken wing, and they're just going through it because they want to get it over with. So I think it is important from that perspective to switch it up. And then also, if you leave athletes on their own, and I'm a hockey guy, but what do hockey players do? They go in the hall and they get a soccer ball out. Or they would get a hacky sack. So that is very similar to, before that game, if you leave that to their own, what are they going to do? They're going to do something like that. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. And if I just gifted, let's say you worked at a performance training facility, and one day a box randomly showed up with 20 footballs in it. And I said, and with training video that just said, hey, instead of all of the build up accelerations you do, I want you to teach the kids pass patterns. It's going to be a small part of warm up, but I want you to start the thermogenic part of your warm up with learning button hooks, and then learning slants, and then learning fly patterns. And then I said, and we'll eventually evolve this maybe into a game where it's 2-on-2 and we're trying to do that. But that's just a small part of this. You as a coach would be stoked. You would be so excited to put those footballs out and be like, forget everything you know about the way we've been warming up. Today, I'm going to spend 5 minutes. I'm going to spend 2 minutes teaching you how to throw a spiral. And then we're going to be just like you and I. If you and I were in that facility, we'd be throwing that ball back and forth, silently judging each other on how well we throw a spiral. And when we did it well, we would be grinning. And if you can throw a pass before the receiver has even looked at you and the button hook comes and they catch it, it is delightful. And it's still just getting them warm. But I've unlocked little bits of athleticism that maybe you don't know if your sport needs. But we all can appreciate how wonderful it is to feel like you've leveled up and you've learned a new skill. Nobody feels that way when you hit them with a brand new, A-skip variation. But they do feel that way if they are throwing frisbees super accurately, just because you let them do it for a minute here and a minute there during warm-ups. And so I think if I'm doing my job really well, there's part of that delight, part of what we know makes people happy, which is feeling like you're growing. And you can make the warm-up a time of little wonderful moments of growth. And you do that through this experimenting and just kind of broadening out what you think a warm-up needs to be.
Yeah, and I work with a lot of older folks, and I always have. And when I learned the Titleist Performance Institute Cyclone for kids,
the Cyclone was absolutely foundational also in me. I took that course, and I know where you're going with this. Keep going.
Yeah, and so for me, the aha moment with that was, this should be great for seniors, because my favorite saying is, you don't stop playing because you get old because you stop playing. And the argument I used to have with Mike about not having kids in the facility, like kids who are 7, 8, 9, Mike would say, well, they should be out riding their bikes or doing this or doing that. And I was like, well, they're not. So I'm going to fill that gap for them. when they come in, that to me, that's what the cyclone did. And that's what I started to do with my older folks. So to your point, I mean, I did have a woman who was in her 70s. She asked me how to throw a ball. I did this in my lecture at Perform Better. She asked me how to throw a ball. She wanted to play baseball with her son or her grandson. That led me to throwing the ball. Then I'm like, well, I got to pitch you. You got to hit too. So then we had this Nerf thing, because I had all the kids stuff. And then I was like, well, I'm teaching you this. Why don't I teach you let's do some foul shots. And then I had these little hockey sticks and we would go back and forth and would get a soccer ball out. Now, the last 3 years that I trained this woman, she couldn't speak. She had a degenerative brain disease, but physically she was fine. Her husband used to come in and he would watch her and he would smile. Like he loved it because it was the only time in her whole world, in her whole life, except for when she saw the kids, was that she was smiling or that she was happy because she could communicate. Like we didn't need to, we communicated through those games. And so I just think when you look at those things, it does lend itself to improve performance, to improve, like for us, it was about transitioning into like functional training, right? Or like, what can we do in the gym that's going to transfer out into the real world? And so we were giving her those skills back and hopefully helping her brain kind of develop those pathways again and keep her brain functioning.
Yeah, how many adults are probably intimidated to start trying to play pickleball or to jump in with their nieces and nephews when they are throwing the frisbee around at the beach, or would never ever go out in the backyard to shoot hoops with their adult friends because they're intimidated. If that was just a little part of a daily warm-up in an athletic gen pop thing, I think you're doing them a service. You are potentially unlocking real fitness, which comes from playing, like really great fitness, which comes from playing a lifelong sport that you could really get actively into. That's the dream, is that people are involved in so many social sports that that maybe even sports performance training becomes a smaller percentage. Boy, that could get me in trouble. But you really want, I think you're dead on. You're giving these adults gen pop skills that might be able to translate to the real world, and it sets you apart, and that's not a small thing.
Yeah, and I don't think it's only for the athletes. Like I think you can dial it down a notch. I can't tell you how many people who I introduce, I call it the power playground for my adults. And what I say is, look, I go back to the quote about, you don't stop playing because you get old. And I say, you're not playing anything anymore. So I want to give this to you in this little section here, in this little 10-minute section. We're gonna do some jumping. I might get the ladder out, which for them, they're like, what is this? Like, they're like, oh, I can't do this. It's funny for them.
I'm not an Olympian. I can't do this.
Exactly. And then I get the medicine ball out and we're throwing, we're slamming, we're chest passing. And for them, and now, then we're doing some bounding, light bounding. We're doing, a jump to a box. We're doing some rotational jumps. So we're getting all planes of motion. But for them, that little 10-minute period is I say, we're going to take you back to the playground. And, it's kind of a version of a sprint, jump, throw, Boyle's idea about like those three. And I'll get them on a bike. I won't have them sprint, but look, we're going to take our bikes to the park and then we're going to throw the ball around. We're going to jump around. And they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I think it's not just for the performance athlete. It can trickle into the general population as well.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to have fun? Anthony, this is why you're good at your job. You get it.
Why aren't we, you said why aren't we reimagining, this warm up? And what do you think is holding a lot of trainers back? Because you solve the problem with your membership website. You solve one of the problems. Well, I don't have any ideas. I'm creative. I can't keep coming up with things, or I don't know. Rhett's doing this. He's been doing it. He can do it in a box. He's going to show you how to do it. Here's all the different exercises. Here's variations on it. What's the excuse people are giving for not changing these warm-ups?
Yeah, I think it's inertia. It's that it's been fine, and it's probably nice to not have to think about that part of training. If you are a strength coach that has a lot of responsibilities and you take your weight room periodization and progressions seriously, and they take all your time, you like probably being able to shut off your brain and do the same or the one of 5 different warm-ups over and over again. What I'm saying is that, that I think will go away, and that it actually, as I've been saying, doesn't take much to stimulate and to reimagine a warm up into something that is better, and also I think a lot of people, especially if you're just following the social media, might think, oh my gosh, I have to go be a PE teacher again, and I have to just have a huge library full of games that you can play with balloons. And that is honestly just a smaller percentage than anyone would realize of what we're doing. When you see the really fun games that Team Germany is getting into, a lot of times I'm playing that game so I can earn myself 3 minutes of microdosing strength. They come off that game smack talking, smiling, and then I make them do a handstand hold against the wall. And then they go down and they do some FRC infinity hovers, and then we drop into an isometric lunge. And maybe I let them bat the balloon back and forth 100 times. They can get out of the lunge as soon as they get 100 touches. Maybe I make it a little bit more interesting that way, but I'm going to grind them because I know I've earned it, and I'm about to send them back to the play zone, and they get to do something fun, and that's kind of the way that I'll set these things up, that I'll think of, okay, how much hard work have I earned through this game? And it's not always going to be zany. Some days if my head coach comes to me and says, listen, we are slow, then I need to look at warmups for the next couple of weeks, and most of them should look like speed sessions. And it's up to me to be able to design a warm-up that is really just having athletes race as hard as they can against each other. But I have to find I'll try to find a lot of different ways so that it never feels monotonous, that they're like, what are the races today? How are we being constrained today? Are we being resisted in these races? Are we getting assisted in these races? And I will do that because I want my head coach to like me and want to keep me as the strength coach. And so if the warm up is a little bit of something that my head coach loves, and also is something that my athletes don't know what's coming, but they understand that it's making them better ultimately at volleyball, then I'm winning this. And hopefully I'm a more remarkable strength coach that can keep a job for a long time.
Let's talk about that structure. Okay. You just talked about the way you set it up, because I think a lot of people are going to look at this and be like, Rhett, I can't do the running man. So I'm not going to, like, they see your video and I'm like, that's not me. I'm like, there's no way I'm going in front of all these people. Like they show, like, if you've ever seen some of Rhett's videos, and they're doing the volleyball warm up, and he's, dancing and whatever. It's awesome. But some people like, that's not for me. It's not really what you do. That's just kind of like, that was your viral video, and it is what you do, obviously. But I'm saying on a daily basis, you have a structure. I was reading in one of your articles about, you're looking at these different blocks, these 3 different blocks. So can you go over how you set this up so we can dial down some of these strength coaches who feel like, there's no way I'm going to, be dancing with my athletes. And it's not willy-nilly. You have a structure for this that I think all strength coaches will appreciate once they hear it.
Yeah. I think of let's just take it, if I had a 15-minute window for my warm-up, I would divide that into 3 blocks. The first block being something that just gets their bodies warm. That is the low bar for keeping everybody safe. So that's my thermogenic block. After that, we have to stretch. So the next block would be, working on tissue length. After that, I have to get them up to game speed. So that's going to be more of the neural engagement. Now, this is typical. Like, I imagine most active dynamic warm-ups did a similar thing. I have thrown out the script of what, that very standard structured library of activities that could fit into those blocks would be, though. So in that first block, I'm not playing some of the crazy tag games, because that's my thermogenic block. People are coming to me ice cold, and they've already done foam rolling and stuff. I don't have time for any soft tissue work once my warm-up starts. That is one of the first things to go, to make room for more time to be expansive about learning, pushing their limits on the movement library. And so I would pick I would pick a couple of microdose strength stuff that I want to get done, stuff that I don't love to have in my weight room. I hate having boring isometrics, almost anything where you have to look at a clock for 30 seconds. I try to take it out of my weight room. It's just a vibe killer. I don't love having abs in my weight room unless they're weighted heavy abs. So anything that that I think is beneficial, but is kind of also a 30-second duration kind of thing, that I'm pushing straight into warm-ups in the week. Similar with a lot of the kind of pre-habby exercises for the shoulder, a lot of the rotator cuff stuff, ditto for knee health, patellar femoral, like if, whether or not you like knees over toes, any of that stuff, all that stuff might go there. Functional range conditioning, all that is fair game for this first thermogenic block. And then if all the microdose strength stuff is really dull and kind of a grind, I'll know I have to earn it by going, okay, let me think about this. We haven't used tennis balls in a long time. I will challenge them to do the hardest tennis ball hand-eye coordination thing that I have in my arsenal. And then they get to try that for a minute and a half before they go back into the work zone. And then we'll try this. Or I have 6 different progressions of crazy tennis ball, either with the ball against the wall for reaction time, or dropping a ball and trying to perform tasks before that ball bounces a second time. There are myriad options, of course, with a tennis ball. If I want to, I partner them up some days so that we're getting a little bit of that social aspect. We're using the ball back and forth. Anyway, I earn it and then we work. I earn it, then we work. And if I can incorporate the tennis ball into some of the strength stuff so that it's kind of sneaky strength, so they don't realize that, if I wanted to hold an iso lunge, then maybe we're trying to bounce the ball between our, under our leg to our partner, who has to bounce the ball under her leg back to us if we're facing the same direction. I'm making the stuff off the top of my head. But after we've done that for 8 minutes, 10 minutes, I guess if we're doing a 15-minute warm-up, it'd be about 7 or 8 minutes. Then I'm going into that stretching block. But stretching, I believe in the least effective dose for stretching. I believe in doing just the minimum amount of multi-joint stretches that get to the stuff that my volleyball players and most athletes need. You need T-spines. You need your T-spine to be stretched out. You need your shoulders. You need your hips. You need your ankles. And I bang those out. And when possible, if I'm already down doing a hip flexor stretch and I can just drop and do a push-up variation, then bam, I've gotten some upper body strength done. I can do some hand balancing. I can do some fingertip holds to make my volleyball players' fingers stronger. So I kind of call it a strengthen and lengthen session, because that's where I'm also getting them to balance on one foot, eyes closed. Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Okay, now drop into frog position, and we'll do some T-spine rotations from a frog position. So that's my spin on that second block, which doesn't take too long. That's 4 minutes or so. And then with my last 3 or 4 minutes, I am neurally engaging. And this is where the restrictor plates can come off. We are at 100%, and all of the tag variations that I have stolen from PE teachers over decades are now in play. If I'm doing my job well, I'm probably utilizing the same equipment like the tennis ball that we were using earlier. So we're not keeping things too confusing for the coach. And I'm doing a search in my library of reactive agility and tennis ball. And I'm seeing what pops up and picking the game that we haven't played in the longest time. And so that's kind of the way I put these things together. That last group, that last block could also involve my sport specific stuff that I've stolen from my coach, that I've watched my coach do. Like I said, if he has been harping them on practice on not rotating enough when they're blocking at the net, then I'm a terrible coach if I'm not wrapping them in straps and having them do those exact, blocking drills while he's watching, that are helping him do his job and making my team better. All the sport-specific drills are in play with my, strength and conditioning spin on them. and plyometrics, my low level plyos. If I am not getting a lot of the plyometrics done that I want to in the weight room, I could throw some in this block as well, because like I said, we're all systems go at that point.
Can you just expand a little bit more on the neural stimulation or some of the things that you would do, or are they going to get more more sport specific, or just give us some of the other drills that you would be doing at that point?
Right. So if I had found a way, maybe in the thermogenic section, I have them full kneeling and throwing American footballs back and forth, right? We're warming. That's my shoulder warm up for that bit. Plus, it's also engaging because they all want to throw a tight spiral. And then, 2 stages later, now I've taught them how to run a fly pattern, and I am having them first run one person throwing, the other person running all out to try to catch a ball over their shoulder. And then I progress that to having a defender who's trying to defend you, and it gets more. All right. So that's one example. If I were using footballs or maybe even Frisbees or anything like that, that's where I go with it. But very often in that last section is where we're doing the sprinting that I know is so crucial for my sport. Like we're in a small volleyball court, but all the research shows how important it is for athletes to be running at their top speed. They don't get to fully just take the restrictor plates off and accelerate hard for 10 meters, 15 meters, 30 meters very often. That's where I'm setting up timing gates. And maybe for the first minute, I'm making them hold some weird objects, right, that slow them down a little bit. They're holding an aqua bag. They got a medicine ball held overhead or a stick overhead. That's how I'm slowing them down. And then I'm like, all right, let's see who our fastest libero is. Let's see who our fastest middle blocker is. And we're just racing. And that is, that is an example of what would happen very often, a couple of days a week. Other than that, I am thinking of like those tag variations. It's like I said, I would hate, this is where I'm borrowing from that guy that opened up a facility across the street from me. I want my athletes, I want stakes. And to give me 100%, there have to be stakes. And sometimes those stakes, much in the rank, record, publish vein of things, the stakes are you don't want to be the first one tagged. You don't want to be, and you do want to be the one that is tagged to the last person, right? And I love the competitive environment. I mean, with my population, they are elite professional Olympic athletes because they are, to a woman, competitive. So I don't have to worry necessarily about not having that or having somebody that wouldn't feel comfortable there. And I pull that lever of gamification constantly. There's nothing that I love more than if I can design in that last block something that is pitting, the youngest players on my team against the oldest players on the team. And that is a rivalry that runs deep, and they get angry when they lose. And that gives me 100% effort. And as you know, as a strength coach, if you're practicing sprinting or plyometrics at 90% instead of 100%, you're wasting your time. You're teaching them not to jump as high as they need to. Like, it has to be 100%. And so I am going to use everything in my arsenal to get them going 100%. And so I hope that answers it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can see some correlation between, obviously you said rank, record, publish, Tony Holler really idea. And then Coach Boyle really kind of took those ideas from the speed only perspective, as far as I know, and saying, hey, we're going to time you, and we're going to, that's the only way we're going to get them to get that full effort, because now they're timing against themselves. Mike, I'm not sure Coach Boyle still loves this idea of contests or challenges or whatever. Can you just touch on that piece of it? Is there any population we shouldn't do that with, or how do you approach this from this idea of challenging them and not getting them possibly hurt?
Right. That is, you asked the question before, and I probably should have answered that when you said, why aren't more coaches doing this? Well, it's absolutely justified to say, listen, I have an adult population. I don't need them bumping each other while they're running full speed, trying to get a football that is 50-50 between them and thrown between them. That's a recipe for disaster. So it's not a question of, are there any populations that shouldn't do this in general? It's like just a question of what things they should do and not do. I'm using these examples of a lot of the full contact. That is a very small portion of what we'd actually do. That we can get a lot out of, if we're going to have contact, I'd like to put that in a more controlled environment because my athletes don't play with a lot of contact. So yes, I think that it is really easy in the huge pantheon of exercises and fun games you can play to find ones that are as safe as you can imagine, as anything, but have athletes trying very hard to be as fast as possible. It doesn't always have to be legs. It can be, arm reaction stuff. It can be, hey, can I do things at speed on one leg? And there's no end. I'm just thinking of each piece of equipment, how you could evolve that to a point where everybody's safe, but not to the point where they could hurt themselves. That is just a question of, using your best judgment and probably being conservative at first and then slowly increasing. I mean, we just 3 days ago did spike ball, right? Spike ball is commonly accepted as a warm up in team sports. There's a lot of, I see, football teams and basketball teams that play a little spike ball as a fun thing to do as warm up sometimes. And the girls absolutely love it on my team, but not a great thermogenic. The girls on the first play of spike ball are diving and running into each other, and it is competitive, and it is an Achilles tear waiting to happen. So even things that might seem pedestrian, I would never or rarely do that as a thermogenic because I just don't like it because it makes me nervous. I'm still conservative. I lose my job if one of our best players gets hurt in my warm-up playing spike ball. So that, like when we were playing that at the beginning, I can't ask them to just play at 70%. That's ridiculous. It's just poor programming if I put a game like that in too early.
I can relate on a different way. I mean, everybody who listens knows I play hockey and so yesterday I was at stick and puck and, so you're usually on your own, but so I would go out and I'll do some sprinting. I try to do some skating for 15 or 20 minutes and work on skating. Right. And so some kids, these two kids are really good. They were like, hey, you guys want to, you want to play. And so it's like half rink thing. And usually I don't always do it. I'm like, these guys, they're playing for like 20 minutes. They don't take a break. So I said, listen, how old are you guys? Kid's like 16, one's 19. I said, I'm older than your parents. So here's a couple rules. Okay, you got to take it easy on me. Number one. Number two, I can check. You can't. That's not true. And then I said, we got to take a break once in a while, guys. We're not playing for 20 minutes straight. But I will say, if you want to do cardio as an adult, find a sport you used to play and play with some younger people. Because to your point about the girls playing spike ball, I think I'm going into that saying, all right, I'm going to take it easy with these guys. Don't get crazy, but all of a sudden you're in it. I'm in it. I'm flying around trying to catch them. I'm doing all this stuff. So, but man, what a workout. I was so jacked up after it. I was so pumped and I felt like, cool, I was still safe and whatever. And again, we're not checking. It's just like 2 on 2, 2 on 3. They gave us one more guy because we were older, but yeah. So I think there's so much to people. We don't understand. Going back to Coach Boyle saying, you got to time he realized until he timed, people weren't given that effort. So then I look at my sprints beforehand and I'm like, geez, that's nothing compared to what I did with these kids in 20 minutes.
First of all, that is a 50 for 50 episode right now. That is impressive. That is that shows what you're capable of. That is awesome that you can get in the mix with a bunch of 16-year-olds. What Coach Boyle realized about the timing, that has revolutionized my weight room. I talked about how in warmups, I would never run a sprint in warmups if I didn't have timing gates. It does not, first of all, the sprints it's too hard to tell who wins if you're sprinting really short distances with 4 girls, and that makes arguments erupt. So I need the little gates to tell me who the actual winner is. But outside of that, taken to the weight room, the entire culture of my weight room changed when all of my squat jumping was done on a jump mat. I almost never have my A exercise, my most important weighted plyometric exercise is never done without a squat mat, without a jump mat. Sorry, because
Yeah.
I need a girl to go over to my computer afterward, have to input their best jump of the 5 and see their running average for the whole time, and I need them comparing themselves to all the other girls on the team, all the other girls that are fighting for their position. I want them all trying to, like 2 days ago, 20-kilo bar on your back, 45-pound bar on your back, and you're just doing a squat jump down and up, just a regular block jump. And we're seeing, hey, who's getting in the 35-centimeter club? Who can jump that 35 centimeters? So far, it's 2 girls on my team. Who else is going to get in there? And that's like a person, and they're looking at each other. Well, that changes the whole vibe of the weight room when there's competition at play. There's not a single rep that was a warm-up rep or an easy rep. Set 1, rep 1 was them going for it. They're cheating it. They're trying everything they can to try to get a better score. I love all of it. Similarly, if we're going to sprint on the curved treadmill, I'm not just saying, please run your fastest. I'm saying, who can run 25 kilometers an hour? Who can make the reading on that thing 25? You have to hold it for 1 second. Don't care. Who's got that in them? Like, that is the way that if you take the no zombies idea and you take it to the weight room, that's where it lives. It lives in, at least recording everything. And then, also making sure that when we go to practice the next day, I am announcing who the winners were. I'm also trying very hard to not have the same girls winning all the time. So I'll vary that A exercise so that it's unilateral, bilateral. Maybe once we're just competing to see who can jump on this high box in the least amount of time. So, I'll set it to just read out how many milliseconds you're on the mat. And hopefully in a given week or month, we've gotten to celebrate almost every girl in the team has been in the top, has been on the podium in that way. And so, and when that gets dull, if the personal stuff gets dull about midway through this season, I'm partnering people up. I'm taking my best jumper and putting them in with my worst jumper. And it's a partner competition to see who can get the best jump total or average between the two. And that's, that re-engages the whole team. And I'll keep playing with those groups. It'll be maybe one day it's outside hitters versus middle blockers versus opposite hit, and I'll keep doing that until, and thankfully we never run out of intensity there. We never run out of stimulating that will to give me intensity, because one more last thing is that in my old age, I have realized that programming doesn't interest me as much. I think I kind of have an idea of the exercises that work well to make people jump high and be injury resistant. What interests me are the levers that I pull that can get athletes excited about Bulgarian split squats when we've been doing them every Wednesday for 6 months. That's what I'm interested in. How can I make that exercise stimulating? How can I make you care about the approach jump with 7 kilos on your back that we've been doing for over and over again? Because that's, I think, where the magic happens in my weight room, at least.
Can you clarify a little bit, just from the perspective of the rank, record, publish? I guess some probably Coach Boyle would feel like with like squatting or deadlifting or even any kind of pressing. Hey, I'm trying to get this weight, and so they might push themselves, and it might not be as safe. Are you doing this with the amount of weight? Also, maybe you're doing it by percentages with the girls, because some might be bigger than the others and stronger. And so like, hey, you went 10% better. This one's only at 5. So it's going to help some of the lower or the less strong girls. Talk to us about this idea with weighted exercises.
This is an outstanding clarifying question, because when it comes to heavy exercises like back squats or famously rear foot elevated split squats, I kept saying Bulgarians. Boy, that's a no around Coach Boy. Oh my God. We need to get that in post-production. We need to take that right out. Sorry, I had to really change that when I went to Europe, where no one has ever heard of RFESS. And every time I put it in their program, there was confusion abounded. So I've had to go back. Anyway, with those, I have created kind of strong enough keystone lifts. Everyone, I'm not shy about telling people our weight room has this club called the 60 kilo club, the 135 club, where every girl on my team strives to be able to do a RFE, a rear foot elevated split squat, knee touching a pad, 3 on each side with 135 pounds on the bar. And that is a rite of passage on our team. And 5 years ago, when I told them that that was something we were going to be going for, jaws dropped. No girl had ever picked up a dumbbell weighing more than 10 kilos in each hand to do those with their foot on a bench and just kind of descending to where they felt like they should and then going back up. I said, nope, from now on, it is all barbells, and we're going to go until blue plates are on this bar. And now we've had over 20 athletes have come through the program that have gotten this. I have athletes at 90 kilos. I have athletes at 75. I had girls that started the season this season at 60, 70, and 80 kilos. And so there is that, right? But no one is allowed to jump up. If they got 40 kilos, basically in the first week of the season with a heavy lift like the Bulgarian or a squat, I say, let me see how strong you are. It's the first week of the season. Your priority is to be showing off for a head coach. So put some weight on the bar that you could do for probably 8, and we're just doing sets of 5. I just want to see how strong you are. And if somebody got up to, let's say on a rear foot elevated, if they got up to 42.5 kilos on their on their last set of that lift, then the next week they're going to get up to 45. And maybe the week after that, they get up to 47.5. And we just make this little stepwise progression. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Like, let's just slowly get you up. But they're not allowed to say, oh, I really want to get in the club. Let me try 60 today. Like, that never happens. And so it's one of those things that we're trying by the end of the season, like right before or during our championships, we go down from maybe 5 reps to 4 reps, and then we finally hit 3 reps, and that's where every girl is like, let me show you what I got. The rep ranges just went down. I'm in. So that is part of our culture too. I want the screaming. And I also believe in strong enough. So I set 60 at that limit. I don't need them getting heavier than that. I feel the same way about squats. Like, I don't need girls putting 110 kilos on the bar. I get diminishing returns with that much weight. Similarly, when we are jumping with weights on our back, we are starting light, and I'm telling you what the weight is. And the athletes, I love a weighted jump. I love a squat jump, not just for the resistance on the way up, but I truly believe that having athletes that are absorbing that weight, that impact throughout the course of a season makes us more bulletproof. Sure. Especially if I'm varying, single leg, double leg. But no one's allowed to, if we're having competition, the competition wouldn't work if it was, it would. You could do it like, how heavy can you make the bar and still jump 20 centimeters? I've done competitions like that before, but 20 centimeters, like, no one's going to be able to do super heavy with that.
Yeah.
But it's a step, like, it's like any good strength coach. I know I have 6 months to get them to do these things, to break these records. So I'm in no hurry.
Talk to us, give everybody an overview of your site, member of the No Zombies site, and where they can get that and what they can expect when when they get through the paywall. Yeah,
as I've been more active on social media in the last couple of years, I do run up against what you said, which is, hey, Rhett, this is great, but I'm not as creative as you are. And I am creative, but certainly not as creative as people would think. I'm just really good at finding the right people to follow and curating my list. And I've kept a really big, messy Excel spreadsheet for a decade. Working in China and the Netherlands, I've gotten exposed to so many interesting coaches that think differently and have used different implements. And I've just been taking notes on that stuff for decades now. And I finally got off my butt and said, well, Rhett, let's put these in a place where you can share them, because it's nice whenever I come to a new gym. We travel a ton, and I'm in foreign gyms all the time. If I go to a gym and I see that they have 12 pool noodles in the corner for some reason, I have never had pool noodles, but I have an Excel spreadsheet that has 15 pool noodle exercises that I have been saving for just this moment. And I'm gonna see which ones are appropriate, and we're gonna be using those. And the athletes are gonna be like, how do you come up with this? How are you so creative? Not creative, didn't remember any of these until I opened up the file. But that's the way that I've done this. And now I'm trying to, I just took these ideas, not just the crazy PE games, but also the way that I would use a tennis ball to help athletes with reactivity or maybe hip mobility or anything that I'm using all of these toys to do. I put in one place, kind of a Netflix style library. So it's a video library. It's all video, and when you go onto it, it looks just like Netflix, honestly, where you can go down and they're sorted by the equipment. It could be no equipment. It could be I have volleyballs, I have a frisbee, I have tennis balls, I have sticks, I have rubber bands, I have medicine balls. Whatever it is, you can sort for that, and then within that, you can also sort for reaction time or prehab or shoulder strength or whatever. And it just it's the library that I wished I had been working with all this time. It's now I use my library instead of my Excel spreadsheet when I'm trying to think of. I'm about to go on the road, and I'm trying to think of what equipment I bring, and I'm looking through my library to see what has the most bang for the buck that I can do on the road. Okay, I should take the frisbees because I have 38 frisbee games. I should take the tennis balls because I have 200 of those. But the library has 400 exercises, and it just keeps growing. I added 10 yesterday. I'll add another 5, 10 after we get off the phone. And so I'm just hoping that it becomes this, kind of asset to coaches who, I can take all of the worry about coming up with something out of it. And they can just get down to making their warm-ups more enjoyable.
Joe Banyai from What's That Strap has done a great job with the straps and utilizing the consumer and their social media. So he reposts all of their stuff, right? And you're like, oh, because Joe's like, people get creative with this stuff. Are you starting to do that with your members, saying like, cool, this is from Anthony Renna, he's doing this, blah, blah, blah. And you put it in?
That is the dream. And I need to be better about asking. There's nothing that delights me more. I mean, I love it when they replicate their exercise. Just today, they took one of my exercises, a hockey team took one of my exercises and added it to ice hockey. So they are doing
saw
this,
that video. Yeah.
Right. And I was like, oh my God, that's my first ice hockey usage of taking it on the ice. That's fantastic. That delights me. What delights me more is where they're like, oh, I took that game, I progressed it these 3 ways. Check this out. That's the dream, is if we get this community and we are all contributing and we get the exponential growth of ideas and we're all benefiting. And athletes are delighted by warm up instead of thinking of it like flossing their teeth, something that they just have to do because that's the way it's always been done.
Yeah, very cool. I want to just kind of change a little directions here. Last couple minutes is, for everybody that's listening, obviously you've mentioned China. So you've worked obviously in America. You've went to China for a while. You were at the Netherlands. You're in Germany now. And you talk about just the advantages of working abroad and how, young coaches, and we were talking earlier, there's a lot of people that somebody will post a job description like, oh, this is, University of blah, blah, blah is looking for a strength coach. This is why this industry, because it's like they're paying $24,000 and they want you to work 72 hours a day. And everybody's always complaining about that. But, you can go, there are plenty of jobs abroad, probably. Just talked about a little bit about how you got into this and how maybe you went on your own and started working with other teams and how great this lifestyle can be.
Yeah, it is something that I'm passionate about. And this is the answer to the question of when everybody asks what advice I would have for young coaches is that everyone does look at that one side of how you become wealthy, which is just making more money, just trying to take jobs that pay you more. There's that other side, though, which is trying to limit expenses. So if you are working abroad, if you, for most or many scenarios, you can get on with teams that are maybe more elite than you could ever land in the United States, because US strength coaches are valued outside of the United States. I mean, thank God we do really well in the Olympics, and strength coaches are well known, that USA strength coaches, and our particular way of coaching, I think, even the maybe it's the feedback I get more often, which is that, hey, you bring a lot of energy and a lot of this. And I think that's just typical of a lot of strength coaches from the US, as opposed to a lot of the ones I see here. Anyway, that you are valuable when you step outside the US. And not only do you stand to maybe make more money, you stand to work for a better team than you could possibly be working for there, get better experience with more elite athletes, and also live rent free. I don't pay for this room. The food here is incredible, Ant. I mean, it is schnitzel every day if I want it. It is incredible. So I can go for, when I first went to China, my expenses were a Spotify account. Like, that was it. And it enables young coaches to bank money that they should be investing, which is another big part of this. But if you do that, if you limit your expenditure, if you're willing to go take an adventure, you might end up making more money than you thought you would, be with crazy elite athletes you never thought you could, and also end up being able to put yourself in a position a decade later that you can only take jobs that you really love, with people that you really want to work with, in countries that serve delicious Wiener Schnitzel. And so, that's the freedom that you want. You don't want to have to be a coach that's working into their 70s because you have to. You want to be that coach that's doing it because you freaking love it. But
yeah. And, look, it doesn't only have to be a short-term stepping stone. You're now in your 50s and you're still doing it. You're still loving it. You're still moving around. I think there's a lot of us that are like that, like need to kind of be around those people, need to coach. Look at Coach Boyle still doing it. He's in his mid-60s. He loves to go in and get a couple sessions in with the guys and the gals, and he absolutely loves it. And just a testament to, being able to control that environment. That's what you really want. Like, you're in control of that job, or not really. I mean, but you picked, hey, I want to go work in the Netherlands now, or I'm going to take this opportunity in Germany,
and only work for 6 months a year. That's the great thing about this job. It's seasonal. So I take my winters off, which is, you get that freedom, and certainly I am greatly appreciative of my time that I spent working for franchise companies. I worked for Exos, what the group that brought me over to China. And that gave me this wonderful foundation of, I learned all those rules before I was able to kind of go on my own and start experimenting where breaking them might fit my personality a little bit better. And it's in doing that you kind of stumble into is what has become kind of a niche. Like, maybe my niche is women's volleyball. Maybe it's the unique style of warm-ups, whatever it is. There's this, it's been a very natural evolution, but not one that I think is just for me. I think that this is kind of a nice way to learn the basics and then learn how to break those rules.
Love it. Love what you're doing. Keep going, keep doing your thing. So glad you started the No Zombies thing to kind of put all this over the years that you've been talking about this stuff, put it all in one place. And just love the like the foreign coaches love is the energy you bring to this stuff. So Rhett, thanks for coming on and talking all about warm-ups and weight room and everything else.
My pleasure, Ant. This, as always, I look forward to this stuff more than you know. I hate one of the downsides of working abroad is that sometimes I feel a little detached from my friends back home. But this really, really warms my heart. Appreciate you.
Well, listen, you're off the blacklist too, since you snubbed me a couple of weeks ago. There you go. But Rhett, thanks again, brother.
Yeah. Hey, great. Thank you.